Good evening, friends and family, and thank you for coming to another night with Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities. We have Pamela Denise Long with us again tonight. She wanted to come back and talk to us about legislations, and we definitely wanted to give her an opportunity to complete all of providing all of the information that she wanted to provide. So we're taking care of this tonight. And so thank you for all of your patience and all of your hard work in trying to make this work out tonight.
No, that's mutual, right? These kinds of life is all about what is the saying? Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. Because, yeah, if you're too rigid about a thing, you get all bent out of shape. And I've been there, done that before, probably at some point today or yesterday. But so thank you for having me on. I enjoyed our conversation last time, and even the private conversations that we've had the opportunity to have. Yeah. And when you guys invited me to come back at any point, I thought, what better opportunity to come back and talk about what we had the press release about, which folks in the community rearranged their schedules to come stand with us in front of the Harold Washington Center on the South Side, as well as people who stopped by, who saw what we were doing, and they were off camera, but they were there listening, engaging, and looking for other options. So happy to talk about the bills that I'll be putting forward, because for me, it's about action and not just about rhetoric. And I think it's time that we have leaders who are going to get things done and get them done quickly, right? You don't need to be in office for, 3, 4 terms before you deliver for the people, in my opinion.
Well, that's an interesting perspective.
Right.
Okay.
Novel.
Well, family, real quick here. As you know, we're a nonprofit organization, and we are about supporting the Black community, trying to sustain the Black communities here in Chicago. I am originally from Chicago, and I have seen such a change in this city. And for my communities, it has not been a good change. And so I personally have a lot of concerns in our organization. We feel that one of the things that we can do is support our Black businesses so we can help circulate the dollars in our communities and try to keep some form of profit here, within our community. So that's really one of the main missions of Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities. And as you know, we support our Black bookstores. We feature a Black bookstore every month. We have the Underground Bookstore. Their website is underground.com, and their address is 1727 East 87th Street. And they're our bookstore of the month. And we still have not been able to contact Christian Harris, who was our winner of our book giveaway, Abolition for the People by Colin Kaepernick, which is a collection of essays, interviews, and reflections from over 30 activists, organizers, and thinkers who challenge policing and prisons. And so we will give another week to try to hear back from Christian. We do see you on our emails. So if you give us a call, we'll make arrangements to get this book to you, or you go to the bookstore. That's what we really would prefer, that you would go to the bookstore and purchase the book so you can see the plethora of reads that Brother Yoel has at that very long time establishment here on 87th Street. And then we also want you to support the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. Banking institutions are very important to the stability of our communities, our families, our homes, our businesses, and they have been around for over 20 years supporting our community. And in order for them to sustain themselves, they need us to open up an account. So please go to the Southside Community Federal Credit Union, which is located at 55th and Wentworth, right there in the shopping mall, and open up an account. They have business loans, micro business loans, personal loans, car loans, loans in lieu of those high interest payday loans, which is crushing a lot of people. I'm sure that could be a whole show in terms of the impact that those payday loans are having on individuals that's trying to make ends meet. It can be devastating. And so they do have a package a little different and a lot better from what you would do and what you would run into as far as these other payday loans are concerned. Your children, it's good to start your children early. 7 years old to 17 years old, they have accounts for them. They offer financial literacy classes, so they're not just interested in getting your money, but they're interested in helping you financially. So please support the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. And then lastly, go to Save Black Bookstores, Chicago at change.org and sign our petition, as we are trying to get more dollars from our local municipalities to support our Black bookstores in our communities. We used to have 22 Black bookstores. I believe we have 9 presently. If you go to our website, we have them all listed. Support our Black bookstores. I know it's easy to write a book and put it on Amazon, but you can also put a few copies in some of our bookstores. I know it's easier to purchase and more convenient on Amazon, but sometimes we have to make that effort, that extra effort to do what we need to do to help our communities. So please support our bookstores and please support the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. So, okay, Pamela, I want you to tell initially our audience, for those who maybe did not see the previous podcast, who you are and the office that you're running for and why.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. And just to amplify your point about a book, there's something about holding a book in your hand. There's something about having a book and passing it on to others. Maybe buying an extra copy and and loaning it to someone, knowing that it might become a gift, but putting it in there that it's from your library and they, all the things, the connections, the relationships. Yes, love books, love books. So I'm Dr. Pamela Denise Long. I go by Denise. I am running for United States Senator here in Illinois. I am a Republican running for United States Senate here in Illinois. I am an Illinoisan by way of Mississippi, so I'm a longtime Illinoisan, as so many Chicagoans are. I'm currently downstate in Edwardsville, so near St. Louis, Missouri, on the ill side, of course, because I have to live in the state, and I've been in the state since 1991. I moved up here in 1991. I've lived in New York, I've lived in Dallas, I've lived in various parts of Illinois, including Chicago, because I went to Circle Campus, had a great time. I lived in Bronzeville, South Loop, right next to McCormick Place, back when it was in the early 2000s. And lived in Carbondale as well. So Illinois is home for me, and I also grew up for about 5 years, from 8 to about 14, in Kankakee, Illinois. So somewhere between Kankakee and Memphis. I lost my accent, although when I go back home to Mississippi, when I'm hanging out with my friends, it'll come back. But yeah, so I'm running for U.S. Senate to put forth solutions to demonstrate the type of courage that I've been consulting with political parties interests about over the years. I've been talking about what Americans First looks like, beyond it being a beautiful slogan, what it looks like in real policy, a native-born labor sourcing plan, making sure that American businesses are invested in, the lineage-based investment proposal that I have, that I'm recommending we redirect half of minority spending. Current dollars, we spend $8.2 billion every year on minority programs. That does not include what we give to Native Americans. And I'm saying 4.1 billion of that should go to the legacy Black American community, considering the reason we set those monies aside in the 60s in the civil rights era is because of the slavery and Jim Crow that Black Americans have experienced in order to redress that. So I'm suggesting we get back to originalism and invest that money in a seed capital approach. And 8 out of 10 Republicans, conservatives that I talked to about that proposal actually agree with it, because they say that was the original intent of the program. So, and there are other bits of legislation we're going to talk about today that I'm looking to implement within 90 days of being sworn into office, so that we can get busy solving issues and delivering for the people.
Well, this is Black History Month.
It is.
And at a lot of facilities, schools especially, if they're not, there should be a lot of talk about Black history and about all of the contributions that we have made. We know about the amount of wealth that was gained off of our free labor, but there's so many contributions that we have made to this country. And when people start to study our history, everyone is amazed and always surprised, and learning something new about what we have contributed here.
Yeah. And isn't that something? I mean, I'm 52 and I learned something new. Like
Yes.
you're right. Every year I'm discovering probably a dozen things that I didn't know before. And it's not just this person invented something or had a significant contribution to the invention of something. It's all the things, right? What in 2023 or thereabouts, I learned about Truman doing this panel, this think tank with Black Americans about what they needed to do during his administration to secure the rights that had been promised but thwarted through Jim Crow. And then
Mhm.
Johnson having another panel, White House panel, called to
Mhm.
fulfill these rights, right? To deliver on these rights that no one has ever mentioned before, and we just happened upon them. There's this whole plan across
Mhm.
domains of life that they created. And so there's always more to learn. And Black American history is American history. We are interwoven within the fabric of this great nation. And at this point, for sure, it is our homeland. And we want it to be secure. We want it to thrive. We want it to survive. And we want to be honored as a significant and founding part of it.
History is very important. It's almost one of our most important uh,
Mm,
areas of study,
mhm,
especially for our people. As I travel different places around the world, and I see so many ways that our history has been covered up and distorted, and there's a economic engine
mm,
behind that, you
mm,
and a misfortune for our people behind that, hiding and not telling all of the truths about
mhm,
who we are and what we have contributed. So, yeah, this shouldn't just be Black History Month. We should be studying Black history 12 months out of the year. It should be a nonstop. That should be our drive to try to find everything we can out about each other. And that brother Yoel that owns the Underground even talked about how some books that are out here have been uh, pages and lines have been taken out of them
mm.
to distort the information. And we
Interesting.
even hear things like that about the Bible. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
how much is still there? So
Yeah.
yeah.
You talked about history being yes. I mean, the history is a foundation upon which we stand, right? And
Mhm.
if you don't know your history, you don't really kind of understand the present, right? And so I agree with you. I think one of the things that we discovered when we found the Johnson uh, plan for Black Americans to fulfill these rights is that King and all the legacy folks who helped to establish that plan had in there to have a national Black American, African American history museum. So
Mhm.
the National Museum that we have now is a fulfillment of something that King and Johnson had fought for and advocated for all those decades ago. If you didn't know about to fulfill these rights, you wouldn't know that that was a thing. And so that those two were connected, I should say. And so, that is another way to study history every day. I've been to events inside of it. I've not toured the entire thing. I've had many, many family members talk about it, and that it's just extraordinary all day sort of experience. And I look forward to actually going to the museum and actually saturating in our glorious history. There's so much about how people talk about America. America ain't never done nothing for Black people, blah blah blah. And the reality is that the radical Republicans did a lot in terms of their fight. And true enough, Black Americans ourselves contributed to our own freedom, right? As Lincoln said, we couldn't have won the Civil War were it not for the brave American freedmen themselves. And then you also think about the folks who were murdered, who put their bodies on the line for the 1960s civil rights era. So there are many things that the nation tried to do and successfully did to make right, or try to make right as much as possible, what had happened to us and to prevent future wrongs. And I think for Black Americans, the call to action now is to really lean into our Americanness, and instead of giving up on our nation, to force, a strong word, but yes, it's 2025, right? We're 20 plus generations into this thing, to force the nation to truly unify and perfect itself, and not listen to the rhetoric that you have somewhere else to go, not listen to the rhetoric that tells you to look to a foreign land, right? You can love Africa or any other place where your ancestry says you have come from, and this is your homeland, and you should defend it vigorously, and you should make sure that it loves you back, and you should give to it and cultivate it and perfect it. And my running for US Senator is one of the ways in which I am attempting to make my nation as perfect as it can be for the people who built it.
Okay. Well, let's get to your legislations. That
Yeah.
was well said. I do have to say, as a nonprofit organization, we do not support Democrat, we do not support Republican, we do not support any particular party. We are about providing education for our people and helping our people to understand. And as we were talking about reading, very important, very important. And but we definitely want to hear what you have to say. And so you said that you want to focus on legislation rather than blaming or defending, these national figures. And so why do you believe outcomes matter more than political matters?
I see politics and public service, right? But politics is the way it gets done, leveraging the branches of government, the levels of government, to use legitimate authority, right? Meaning you have the power to change policy and practice, to better the living for the people is what it's all about, is what you're running for, is what I'm running for. And so, to me, if you're not focused on the outcomes of the actions you're taking, policy, judicial decisions, regulatory changes, executive implementation, then what are you even doing, right? Like, if we're not looking at outcomes, the impact on the people, I think you're missing the whole plot. The whole idea is to secure the rights, right? To implement those rights, to protect those rights, to safeguard those rights of the people. That's what the people have submitted themselves to governance for, is to delegate the doing to the few people who have the responsibility. So, I can hold folks accountable. I definitely know how to do that. And if an official at any level of government needs to be held accountable because they're breaching the Constitution and they're trampling on people's rights, I have no problem holding or asking for a senatorial investigation, or even referring to the DOJ or whatever level of government appropriate. But that's not the whole of it, right? There are things that need to get done. For example, one of the things that I've talked about is the fact that while people are pointing fingers at Donald Trump, they're neglecting the areas in which communities are still suffering, right, in real ways. So, heirs property, for example, and family land and home equity protection is two of the bills that I am going to present within 90 days of being sworn into office, because we are losing wealth through predatory practices. We're losing wealth. Black communities in particular are losing wealth in the cities, brownstones and the like, that are being undervalued because the owner is strapped. They're behind on taxes. So somebody looks you up and finds out you might be desperate and comes and tries to take your home from you. People shoehorn themselves into the wills of elders who are vulnerable and perhaps lonely, and try to take the property from under heirs, even if the heirs are in good standing with the homeowner. And all of those things need to be held accountable. And so what I'm looking for is a large provision of enforcement there, because the weakness in current heirs property and other like home equity, the home equity is not really covered, but the heirs property element in current legislation, it doesn't have enough enforcement. So I'm looking for patterns of bad behavior so that those with patterns of bad behavior are identified at the state level. And I explicitly refer to the Department of Justice because, you know, home ownership, land ownership is wealth. And I think folks have a right to enjoy that wealth in however they see fit, whether they're renting it, they're living in it, they're holding it for recreation, they visit it sometimes, or whatever the case may be.
So what do you think about taxes, property taxes?
That's a huge
And
problem.
yeah, property taxes is one. And, you know, people being able to afford to take care of their property. This is a, you know, everyday type of a problem that you see in our
Yeah.
communities.
Yeah, in Chicago, particularly on the south and southwest sides, the property tax rate is increase is almost 20%. That's just very difficult for people to swallow in a year. Property taxes across Illinois have gone up for everybody, and we just surpassed New Jersey as the state with the highest property tax rate. So we're pushing people out of the state because they can't afford to live here, and so it has to be addressed. Now, that is a state level jurisdiction. However, at the federal level, one of the things that I've proposed is that I will work with whoever is the governor to look at inefficiencies in the money management of the retirement plans that we currently have, because that's a large reason why property taxes have increased, because of the retirement burden, the retirement plans, particularly from education, but public retirement plan. And so work with the governor to find inefficiencies in money management, to also really capitalize on the robust infrastructure, transportation infrastructure in particular, that Illinois has. All rail leads through Chicago, it seems, right? All rail, all roads. And so Chicago is the #1 transportation hub for people and products, but we have a lot of congestion in the area. So there's already some work that's underway to relieve that congestion. I want to make sure that we have routine and regularly occurring infrastructure bills, because currently they kind of pop up, then we don't have one for a long time, and then issues happen. So there are two ways I'd like to deal with that. Particularly, I think the economic growth element of finding other ways to invest in biofuels, because we're the second largest corn producer. There's research and development that's happening at universities that focuses on biofuels, turning wood chips and waste into fuel, for example. So just really looking at how we can even reshore some jobs for these areas that have been divested from. Like down here where I am, Granite City Steel was going out of business until Donald Trump saved it. And so how can we reinvest in those areas and have more of a base for Illinois' income than just taxing the people, because it's truly not sustainable.
And I think one of the other concerns that people have is about transparency in terms of where dollars are going.
Oh, absolutely.
Tax dollars, you know, fees, you know, added, you know, where does the money go? Some level of transparency to the people, because like we're paying more and more money, and they keep needing more and more money, but we don't know where the money that we're putting on the table is
Right.
going.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and let's not even get started about how the money is going to illegal aliens and things of that sort, right? And then waste, fraud, and abuse. We saw what was happening, legitimate allegations and actual prosecutions that were happening in Minnesota with the feed the children. So we have to do a better job of auditing and cutting off these wasteful spendings.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, for Black voters who feel politically overlooked,
Mm.
um, what does results over rhetoric, because we get a lot of rhetoric, look
Yeah.
like in your first 90 days? Because we get a lot of promises and about what we're going to do, and it's usually things that maybe people have some concern about, but that's just what it is. It's rhetoric.
Mhm.
And then after those people are in office, you don't hear anything from them. You can't get in touch with them. Um, and then they come back and they want you to vote for them again, and they'll tell you about this legislation that they push through, and have some pictures of them and some little children or a veteran in a wheelchair. You know, uh, how does that look like in your first 90 days? You say?
Yeah, so I am going to answer that question, but first I need to go get my charger, which I left in a different place of the house. So hold on, hold that thought. I will be
Okay,
right back. I'm so sorry. I don't
okay,
want to
that's
lose
all
you.
right. Okay, all right. You don't put my nose. Oh, there's mine. Okay. Ooh.
All right.
Okay.
So, beautiful question. Beautiful question. One, I plan to be the type of communicative legislator where people have a newsletter where they can see what I'm doing, where I am using social media and other avenues like I currently do to update people and educate people about what's going on, and also to get public feedback about what's happening, right? I have a presence on Twitter X. I will plan to keep that, including potentially hosting spaces and having conversations, coming on podcasts like this with the community to get feedback on what's happening. So it's not just a one directional communication, but it's going on the entire time. And the other thing I think is super important, which I don't know that I see enough elected officials talking about, is there needs to be coordination from the federal level, Senate and US House, to the state level, right? Congress, to the local level, wards persons, mayors, community leaders, and the like. I plan to have advisory boards where when legislation is coming down, there are people across the state who are participating in and telling me what the blind spots might be, what the needs
Mhm.
are that they have, because I'm ultimately there to make the best decisions possible, and who best to educate you, me, about what the blind spots might be, what the needs are, than the people who are experiencing it. So I plan to be uber communicative so that people get to know me in real time throughout my tenure in the US Senate.
Because we used to have precinct captains.
Mm.
And with those precinct captains, they would let us know what's going on. You know,
They
uh,
don't do that anymore?
no, we don't have
Mm.
precinct captains anymore. They got rid of them a long time ago. I was
Interesting.
actually told by one of the congressmen that they couldn't afford to keep them, on
Uh,
staff. But just, people being aware of legislations that are coming up and ones that are going to directly impact us, how they're going to impact us, and why we need to, you know, respond, how we need to respond, how we can support it, you know.
so here's what I think with that. We have precinct committeemen within each party. What I think is it'll be important for those PCs, and we always need more PCs. It will be important, I think, for those PCs to participate in calls updates and the like so that they can communicate that at the local level. So there's a way to get around that. Their PCs are volunteers, but they generally have a commitment to the community. They generally have political aspirations, meaning they want to also run for office in order to represent the communities that they live in and serve. And so I think the PCs are a way to do that. Even though they're volunteers, I think they would appreciate, some of them would appreciate the opportunity to be directly plugged in to what's happening in DC. So thank you
Okay.
for that.
That's something you'll keep in mind.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So as we know, you were talking about home ownership and
Mhm.
Black families, Black families losing inherited
Yes.
properties, inherited homes, due to unclear titles,
Yes.
tax
Lack of a
sales
will.
that you mentioned earlier. Um, how would your legislation prevent people's displacement? Because people are losing homes all the time because
Yeah. So at the federal level, we can certainly look at the SALT cap, which is the cap that the feds put into place that limits the amount one can write off for state and local taxes on their federal income tax. Currently, that's $10,000. They had proposed raising it to $40,000, but that did not pass both houses. And for a couple reasons. One, if we raised the cap and allowed you to write off all your property taxes, it would not incentivize states to tax you less. States would tax you more because ultimately you get to write it off, and essentially it sort of disappears into the federal budget or federal budget shortfalls, right? So there's that. I think in terms of heirs property, which is, like you said, property that does not have a clear will and or the title's not particularly clear or clean, and it ends up in probate or other civil proceedings. One is making sure that people's property valuation is fair market value, that there's not just some blanket statement where you acknowledge that I might offer you this. I can't guarantee that my offer is fair market value, right? It's required that fair market value be disclosed before you sign on the bottom line. And if you choose to sell at less than fair market value, then that's an informed decision that you're making. The other thing that my legislation will help with is making sure that a fractional heir, meaning somebody who says, I'm ready to sell, and if whatever, and so forcing everyone else to sell even though they aren't ready to, that doesn't happen, or at the very least allowing the heirs who do want to keep the property more time to get their pennies and coins together, I guess I should say, so that they can purchase the home from the others who do want to sell. And again, the big thing is enforcement. There has to be more penalties for people who prey on folks who look at the obituaries, for example, and then start calling
Mm.
people about selling the houses and just, and driving by the house. And yeah, it just gets very predatory. So we're looking for a pattern of behavior that suggests that people are preying on folks in some of their most vulnerable moments. And then another bit of legislation that I am going to propose is something called the Fair Justice Act. The Fair Justice Act basically addresses the ways and acknowledges and seeks to redress the ways in which too many innocent Americans of all ethnicities and demographics are wrongly targeted and incarcerated. So what it does for those who are exonerated, and exoneration, of course, meaning someone who went to jail or prison and they were innocent, they were found innocent. It ensures that they have mandatory compensation, so creating a federal floor for that compensation level and mandating it. Automatically you get it. You ain't got to go to court, try to find a lawyer, the lawyer get a portion of it. It's automatic. When you are exonerated, you get it. And if there are bad actors involved in your wrongful incarceration and wrongful detention, then those actors are held accountable through civil rights and other Department of Justice mechanisms.
Okay. So then this is still regarding your heirs property,
No, that's a
divorce
different bill altogether. The Fair Justice Act is
and Fair
about,
Justice Act.
yeah, it's
Okay.
about making sure that exonerees get automatic and mandatory compensation. So, there's some people. There's a man, I can't remember what state he lived in, but I think he spent 30 some years in prison for a crime he did not commit. Do you know they did not compensate that man at all?
Mm.
Yeah, we can't have that. That's a whole life taken, right? 30 years is a generation, kids, marriage, all the thing, right? Just destroyed. So, my Fair Justice Act, a different bit of legislation altogether, would mandate compensation for those who are incarcerated, and it provides an enforcement mechanism to hold bad actors accountable.
Okay. And then for those people who are wrongfully incarcerated, I think one of the other problems has been getting, while they're in prison, getting the right level of support
Mhm.
that they need, knowing how to navigate the system while
Mhm.
they're in court. And then you have those people who have been accused of crimes, but they, have not been persecuted, but you got so many people just sitting there
Mhm.
and they have been accused and nothing has happened.
Yeah, so that's the whole idea of a breach of the social contract about a timely trial, right? Which is one of the reasons that Illinois did the Safety Act or whatever with the no cash bail, but they've gone they've missed the target on that a whole lot because they're just letting anybody out at this point. People are causing more problems. Repeat offenders are causing more problems. But so the idea with the Fair Justice Act also is to have consequences be so significant that the people who are um, investigating crimes, interacting with citizens in the moment, will think twice about doing something untoward, something um, illegal to set that person up for a crime because there will be consequences on the other side of you doing so. So investigate the crime if the evidence is there, legit evidence is there, present that in the jury or other process. But don't do the extra sauce where you're setting people up or you're fudging, you're not disclosing all the information to the defense because you want a conviction so that the public feels like the case is closed, but you're throwing an innocent person away, whereas the person who really committed the crime is running around scot-free and maybe even committing more harm to other people. So it's both a deterrent for what happens with exonerations, right? Why they happen, as well as it makes people as whole as we can for people who've been wrongly convicted and sequestered from society and from their family.
So does this impact the prosecuting level, prosecutorial level? Does this impact it there as well? Because you get a lot of, you know,
Yes.
conversations about the attorneys, the judges,
And
uh,
also the defense, right?
ultimately this impact on Black people and especially Black men when we dominate the prisons.
Yeah. So what I will say is that nothing about the law prevents anyone from being referred to the Department of Justice for a violation of their ethical duties and or constitutional violation of constitutional rights. Judges generally are perceived as having large immunity, and I would say that no one is above the law and no one should be above the law. And if there are people who are above the law, then we need to fix that because we don't have law and order if people can thwart your civil rights and have no consequences.
Well, let me ask you this, since you mentioned judges. That is an area where many people, when we go to vote, and you have all these judges to vote for, and you don't know anything about these judges, and you want to look up information, what should you be looking for
Mhm.
when you're trying to look up information about these judges? Because there's so many
Yeah.
of them that we have to vote for.
So one, find organizations that look at that. The NAACP and other civil rights organizations generally have some kind of guidance on that. You want to actually look at the judge's record. You want to Google the judge and their cases. So John Doe, Judge John Doe in the eighth district. What has he ruled on? What are the controversies? We have Chat GPT now, so you can throw something like that in the Chat GPT, right? And get an idea of how this person tends to rule about civil rights. Have there been any complaints about this person? What's their record on, ruling in family court? Do they tend to be fair when it comes to fathers' rights? Do they tend to, that kind of stuff Chat GPT can spit out to you pretty darn quickly now. So you have a lot of tools. And you know what, Denise, you may have just hit on another area in which one can develop a not-for-profit organization to serve the community, to educate the community, create a platform, an interface that does this work so that people can be educated about it, and teach people how to read their ballots and what to look for a judge. Even what's a judge's job and what's the difference between a judge at the circuit level versus one at the federal level. So yeah, there you go. Business opportunity, make it happen to serve the community for sure.
Absolutely. So how does this justice reform connect to economic opportunity and family stability for our community?
So I think the average wage is about, across a lifetime, averaged out is about $72,000, averaged out, right? Because people earn more as they get older. And so the impact on the kin network for people who go to jail is pretty significant. If you have children, your children have missed out on the opportunity of you being there for them. That has an impact on their development. If you have a elderly or even an aging loved one, parent or whatnot, and you are incarcerated, what happens to those folks in terms of their getting to their medical appointments, their home maintenance, and all of those types of things? So it has a rippling effect, the cost of which can be obviously quite significant. Not to mention, you think about the crime bill and how the 3 strikes you're out thing has, research shows it has changed how Black women date, because while Black women have been out here, free and getting educated, the number of Black men who are in contact with the criminal justice system is significant. And most women want to date a man who's doing better than she is. And if a brother's just getting out, and I'm not trying to advocate for intra-racial dating and saying you can't date who you want, do your thing, it ain't my business. But I am saying that policy, right, of mass incarceration has had a significant social impact. So I'm talking about pretty significant.
And then you look at reentry barriers that should be there, like employment, housing access, and even people going to prison and getting degrees. And coming out, can't get a job, can't rent an apartment.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, they changed it where the Pell Grants are back in prisons now. I also think we need to look at all the ways in which, for someone who's incarcerated, we want them to, while they are sequestered from society, we should be rehabilitating them and teaching them, helping them heal from whatever happened to them, and habilitating them. For some people, there's skills that they need to have that they just have never learned. And so we should do everything we can to make sure when people come back into society, when they re-enter society, they are stronger than they were, more equipped when they went in there. And so one of the things that I talk about, which not everybody is a fan of, is I think that people who are incarcerated should also be able to vote. Why not? I think that if we want people to feel connected to society and feel a part of it, why not start working on that when they are incarcerated in all the ways, from vocational training to therapeutic interventions for well-being and healing from trauma and childhood adversity, to like educational training, as well as civic education.
Okay. Well, my next question is around the 14th Amendment. Okay.
One of my favorite topics.
U.S. clarification of the 14th Amendment, Birthright Citizenship Act of 2027, right?
Oh, yes. So,
yes, because this has some deep historical roots for us, our Black people, in protecting, formerly enslaved people, descendants of enslaved people in this country. So how do you ensure, as you're clarifying this, that it's going to preserve that original intent?
Yeah. So in the bill, I clarify many of the original statements, the quotes from the people who were there forming the bill. And they made it very clear that the intent of this bill was to clarify the citizenship status of the freedmen, the free Negroes, and their descendants. The chief framer of the bill made it clear that foreigners and the children of aliens, their word, because it's a legal term, not a disparagement at all, that aliens to the nation from a legal perspective, they were, of course, their language, of course, not to be covered by the 14th Amendment. And so I will present that within 90 days of being elected. And here's the goal. The goal is not exclusion. The goal is to make sure that the original intent of 14, which was designed during the Reconstruction era to make sure that the freedmen and Negroes, free Negroes and their descendants had covered constitutional protections forever. Those men who were forming the Reconstruction era certainly did not mean, obviously, they did not mean for anyone in the world to be able to come over here and compete with the freedmen for those protections that were fought through blood, right? They said themselves, of course, it does not include the children of foreigners and aliens and of diplomats. And that's important for a few reasons. One, the multi-generational Black Americans are now the third largest body politic in the United States, second to Hispanics. And that is only due to mass immigration and the amnesty that Reagan did in 1986. And so decisions are made through the number of people who can vote in a certain way. We have to maintain our political power as the founding Black population. I'm not too ashamed to say that. As a matter of fact, every Negro needs to be willing to say that. We have to maintain our political power. We have to restore our political power. I've had immigrants tell me that y'all can't get nothing done without us. So we're supposed to be supporting their mass immigration aims, or them, saying they deserve reparations because, the Western United States is Mexico and they're here to get it back and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot that needs to be done, and I am excited to present it. What I'm not going to do in that bill is suggest that we're going to allow the people who have assumed that they're citizens based on their reading of 14A. We're not going to codify their assumption into law by saying that they and their children are indeed citizens. That's what my bill doesn't do. Now, the bill that Thomas Massie is supporting, that was written by Brian Babin, by my reading of it, it does indeed suggest that that bill leaves a room to codify those people's assumption and to give them citizenship through law. Congress does not have the right to do that because the 14th Amendment plain text and the letter of the law doesn't give them that right. It does not say that the children of aliens will be citizens. It says that they, of course, will not be. So my bill makes it plain and asks people to take a stance on originalism. If Republicans are going to be about originalism, then let's be about it.
So there should be a separate immigration policy from civil rights protections.
There needs to be a determination. First of all, the legislation we can do to clarify original intent. We have that right as Congress to do that, Senate and House. However, there's a controversy before the court right now about if the president can decide that, as I read it as president, the original intent is what Denise just said. And therefore, I'm going to stop issuing these birth certificates to y'all because according to the original intent, as I read it as president, y'all ain't supposed to get it. So that's what the current case before the Supreme Court is. So they're not saying if you are the children of aliens are citizens or not. They're just deciding if the president can read the original intent on his own. So what I'm doing is providing a bolster to the president's EO. My bill would say through Congress, this is what we read as Congress, the previous Congress said based upon their own words. So that would undergird the president not issuing birth certificates to the children of aliens and foreigners. They would get a certificate of live birth stamped as he prefers, not valid for citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
Does
I
that make sense?
remember my first trip to Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to Nigeria, the
Mm-hmm.
airplane was full of newborn babies.
Yep.
I was like, oh, this is going to be a terrible ride. But it wasn't, they kept them quiet,
Mm-hmm.
quiet. But I just looked all over the plane. There were so many
Uh-huh.
newborn babies, And
Yep.
when you put these policies in place, people do, what they feel they have to do to make their life better, whatever it is, even our welfare system, things
Yeah.
that people do,
Mm-hmm.
put
Mm-hmm.
these policies in place and you're dangling this out here and
Mm-hmm.
these things are going to happen.
Yeah, and see that's the other thing. We've known for, well, really since Wong Kim Ark, right? When they extended birthright citizenship. Although his parents, as I understand it, did have permanent domicile. So he was, you know, he could be considered a legit BRC. Though that's an expansion of the original intent. But my point is we've known for at least 100 years that this is an issue and people just kick the can down the road. I'm not here for kicking cans. I'm here to get things solved and to do it efficiently and effectively and think about the impacts, the long range impacts of decisions that I'm making. Closing gaps is what my candidacy and what my tenure will be about, as well as innovating for solutions that will undergird the success of our grandchildren's children.
Okay. You have the VALOR Launch Act, Veterans Transition Support, and we know we have a lot of Black Americans that are serving in the military. So, how would this VALOR Launch Act that you have improve transition outcomes for Black veterans?
Yeah, thank you for this question. So, the military was the exception for race-based affirmative action from the Supreme Court ruling of 2023. It was the one area where they said you can recruit based on race. I conducted 2 town halls with other candidates about veterans' needs, veteran suicide prevention, as well as other policies that veterans need. And what became clear to me is that the transition from enlisted to civilian life does not support their success. And so there are situations where they've been away and or on the war front, in the war theater. They come home to a family, to children, to a spouse, with all the trauma. And there's no real support for them, or they don't know how to find it. And then there are situations where veterans have had significant leadership roles and professional careers in the military, but that doesn't transition into a similar, commensurate civilian role. That can be fixed in many ways. CDLs is one of those. There are ways in which rural veterans are very disconnected from the Veterans Administration infrastructure. So there's some restructuring that I plan to support there in the bill that will help pull veterans into infrastructure, including some funding of veteran service centers at the state level that currently are underfunded or unfunded.
Can you
And
tell me which
so,
ones those are?
say again, please.
Tell me which one those are that are currently
So,
funded.
so they're all across the state. So every state is supposed to have veterans community access centers or something. I will mess up the acronym, VSACs, but Veterans Community Access Centers that are supposed to help veterans transition. Many of them go underfunded or unfunded. So it's kind of an unfunded mandate. So the idea is the way that I have it structured, it will not increase the burden on the state. It will just change some of the expectation and funding for the organizations.
So this is like for This is like for mental health and
For everything.
housing.
Yeah, we're
Mhm.
referring them, connecting them. It's wraparound care. It's making sure that that people are checking on them. So it's helping increase the transition. So currently, it's like you getting ready to go. You got 30 days. Like, this is what you got. This is what you got. And in the meantime, you're still doing your other stuff. So I've extended in that bill the transition period to 18 months, and there's some other components of it as well. So that's what it's designed to do. Veteran suicide is significant. I think 17.5 on average, 17.5 veterans commit suicide every day. So that's 6,500 veterans plus that commit suicide in a year, every year. And for those who committed suicide, 61% of those who committed suicide in 2023, I believe that data is from 23-22, 61% of them had not received veteran services in the year preceding their suicide. So the disconnect from service, intervention availability, and the ultimate decision to end your life is it's there, right? The implication is there. So we want to make sure we preempt that by keeping them connected to service. I am endorsed by Veterans for America First. They saw the work that I was doing for veterans, innovating for veterans, and they decided to endorse me. And that endorsement means a lot to me. I have a lot of veterans in my family background, including my great grandfather, whose headstone his brother went to pick up at the Greenwood, Mississippi train station, so that he was buried with honors because of his service in the military.
What about entrepreneurship?
Yes.
I was wondering about entrepreneurship, and I mentioned something earlier about people getting degrees while
Mm.
they're in school. If they can do something with those degrees, or they're just getting a degree while they're in, if they're not able to do anything with it, that
Mm.
looks predatory to me as
Mm.
well.
Mm.
But what about that? And then what about entrepreneurship opportunities?
Yeah, so when the federal government decided to start paying for education back in the 80s, 90s, I guess they were pushing everybody toward higher education. The prices just kept going up and up and up and up because the government was going to pay for it with grants and loans and all blah, blah, blah. And so there are ways in which institutions have sold degrees that really don't benefit the person. There are ways in which institutions have started people on higher education programs and then created all these barriers and hurdles to their finishing. Doctoral programs in particular, I believe there was a university that was sued because of the number of Black women, particularly who were starting their doctoral work and just never finished because they, nickel and dime you, hey, change this about it, and then change this. And before you know it, you got to take another class and all that kind of nonsense. I think that higher education, in the way we think about it, from bachelor's, master's to doctorate, is not necessary for everyone. I think we should definitely be leaning into both trades and formal higher education for the jobs that we need. I think we need to be talking about STEM and technology and how we need more Americans serving in those roles, as well as in support roles. In terms of entrepreneurship, I'm a business owner. I've started a couple businesses in my lifetime, and access to capital has always been an issue. Being able to get loans, right? Some people, the business is all about relationships. It's about who you know. And if you have friends who will hire you to get things done, it makes your business development, growth, expansion a lot easier.
Mhm.
Whereas if you're starting cold and you're out here just kind of networking on your own, it's difficult. So I think there are some things that there's some education that needs to happen. Part of the lineage-based investment plan that I have includes some business growth elements and equity in businesses, so that the original intent of the Minority Business Development Agency, the MBDA, is realized, so that the federal government was supposed to take an active role in developing black owned, and when I say Black, I'm talking about legacy Black American businesses, knowing that they'd been divested from and no one had really tried to even educate them. They'd been used and the like. And I want to make sure that as far as as the small business the SBA goes administration and other business funding, that when someone, a contractor hires a Black business that, or a minority business, but a Black business, that business is actually being run by the actual Black person, that they're not just a facade, right? And those types of regulatory things. I mean, really minding the business of the people when it comes to business development.
Access to capital is so
Mm-hmm.
key, as you mentioned, to having a business. I was having a discussion with someone. There was a hotel in Vegas called the Moulin Rouge.
Mm-hmm.
It was built in 1955.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was during the time when Black entertainers could go to the hotels on the Vegas Strip and
Mm-hmm.
perform, but they couldn't stay there. They couldn't dine there. They'd go out the back door. And
Yeah.
so these two Jewish businessmen was noticing that they were going to the west side of Vegas, where a lot of Black people live, and there was all this entertainment, and they knew Black people had money that they could spend in these hotels, and they're like, this is money going down the river. So it was really the reason that they opened up this hotel, the Moulin Rouge, and allowed everyone to come in. So now Blacks could come in, they could dine, they could stay there. You have Black and whites, and they were doing so well. They had plenty of patrons that were coming in, and they stayed open after nights and all of that. But they ran out of business in 6 months.
Why?
And the reason they ran out of business is because they were not getting the same financial undergirding of support from banks, from mobsters, probably at the time, from investors, because it didn't matter that they were making all of this money from their customers. They needed those bridge loans. They needed money for slow times, for difficult times, for growth. None of it was there because these other hotels wanted to continue segregation. So nobody would support them. So they closed in 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so so these were two Jewish guys, even though they allowed Joe Louis, the boxer, to have like a 2% interest in the business. But nobody was going to support what they were doing. And this is what happens to our businesses all the time. They can't get that level of support. And so they struggle. They end up overcharging us.
Yeah.
And then access to capital.
Yeah.
What can be done about that?
Yeah, relationship building is super important. I think you mentioned some of a credit union or a bank. I think that those institutions need to make sure that not only are they accepting Black dollars in, but when it goes out, the money that goes out is helping Black businesses develop. That's what matters, right? It's not just that you're Black owned or whatever, your credit union, and you have a whole bunch of Black depositors. Who are the businesses that you are supporting, right? I think also that there needs to be a lot more networking within the community, not just amongst Black people, but also amongst all people. There are some great business incubators and referral network processes that I think many people in business don't tap into, that they should. So I think overall that there's room for education about business development and pathways to turning a struggling business into a business where you are paying your own salary, and potentially an employer business where you're hiring other people, be they family members or not.
Okay. And also going back to your Heirs Property Reform Act, wouldn't that strengthen access to capital?
Yeah, because what we saw with what happened with the housing boom back in the days when Long Island was being developed, is that people use that home equity to pay for their children's college, to help their children develop businesses, to afford, undergird their own businesses and those types of things. So yes, home equity can certainly be used for that and using it as collateral as well.
And then we've got the still talking about this home, our homes, using our homes as capital, and then using our homes as intergenerational wealth.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You can bequeath it. Your home, you can have a home. The homes are protected regardless of their use in this bill. So if you have a rental property that's bringing in income, it's protected in the heirs property as well as the Family Land and Home Equity Protection Act. And it covers everyone across the country. So it's not just for Chicago, it's for all of Illinois. It's for all of the United States because it will be a federal law. So it would set federal standards of protections where some state standards might be weak because we haven't done enough to make sure that Americans can keep what their their parents and their grandparents have built, and so this is meant to stand in the gap for that.
How do you measure whether legislation is actually impacting, our life
Yeah,
outcomes,
yeah. I think first of all,
especially for our children.
yeah, I think first of all, looking at what the problems are and addressing the problems, not just coming up with stuff and haphazardly doing it, and understanding the nuance of the problems, the layers of the problem, so that the various pieces of what's currently missing from heirs property protections and family land protections are being addressed in a bill or two, which is one of the reasons I separated these two bills out because they're
Mhm.
different enough in content and purpose that they needed to be separate.
How do you view AI
Mm.
and
Have
its
you?
impact on education
Yeah.
and jobs?
Yeah, so this is a big one, and I think people are underestimating um, the vulnerability we have with AI. One, these AI data centers and how they are threatening to increase the utility bills for Americans simply has to be addressed. The idea that we're going to lose many jobs to AI being able to solve a problem virtually. We need to make sure that AI is augmenting, supplementing human potential and not replacing human potential. And what that looks like is going to be complex. I think we're going to have to look at and consult with AI ethicists. So I've been studying that and listening to some of the folks who have been warning about the potential threats of AI for years now. And people are moving forward with a sort of recklessness, with a sort of, yeah, let's do this and see what happens. And it reminds me of that quote from Jeff Goldblum's character in Jurassic Park that said, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
That's right. That's right. How would you work across party lines?
Mhm. You know, I believe that most people are looking to do the best that they can for the people who sent them to do the job. And so, whether you are a Democrat or Republican or an independent or whatever party, I want to make sure that I am introducing myself personally to the staffers and the other 534 Congress people that I'll work with, as well as introducing myself and getting to know the folks in the executive branch who will be implementing the laws of Congress, as well as in the judiciary. I will work across party lines because my ultimate goal is policy and people over party and country and constitution over everything.
Some Black people, especially Black voters, feel both parties. They
Mm.
make promises, but they fail to deliver.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we see it happening. The establishment, the swamp, is a real thing. There are ways in which people who have accumulated power over the years believe that their perspective and their chokehold is what is needed. And I think disruptors are important. And I think this year and 2027, when I'm sworn in, it's time for disruption. It's time to reset the narrative. It's time to get back to a social contract with the people. And I think we are at a point where people have been so disenchanted by Democrats and so disenchanted by Republicans that they're ready for a social contract. And I think part of that social contract is some of the stuff that you mentioned. It is nonpartisan. It's focused on policy. It is not performance. It is about problem solving. It is about solutions rather than sensationalism. And I'm here for that kind of problem solving, because the one thing I don't have what you're not going to do is waste my time. Right.
Mhm.
And so I will cut up with people who are performing and not getting the work done, or trying to hamstring me because whatever. Our country is going to hell in a handbasket because people have wasted time, and they focus more on party politics and lining their own pockets or protecting corporate interests than they have on serving the people.
Do you believe in term limits?
I believe in, I have struggled with the concept of mandatory term limits, because what I've told people is it's a double-edged sword. You want mandatory term limits because you want ineffective leaders to leave. But when you have mandatory term limits, you're going to have to lose an effective leader just the same. And the current establishment has more money, more resources, more of a pipeline of flunkies than you do. And so they're just going to wait out your good leader and erect their flunky. So you need to get busy holding people to account and putting people in the first place who have the courage to do what needs to be done, and integrity, I think, and competence to do what needs to be done.
What would you say to the Black voters who are skeptical, and it's
Mm.
probably more than skeptical, about Republican leadership?
Yeah, I think you should be skeptical of all of it.
Mhm.
Ask the hard questions. Look at people's records. And I think you need to really be willing to give people the stuff when they are veering from the principles that they promised to uphold. I can imagine that there is an immense pressure on people in DC. And I can tell you right now, if you see me go to DC and I sound any differently than I do right now, you need to know, look, come save me. Okay. Like, blink twice. You know that I'm blinking twice. If I go up there and I sound different, somebody done did something real significant, right?
Yeah.
Because I've been consistent in my advocacy, and nothing that I am advocating for requires silence, should be silenced. I'm advocating for constitutionally sound, fiscally conservative, responsible policies. Yeah. And I think a lot of people get caught up. I think this Epstein thing is another example of how people get caught with their pants down, pardon the pun, and or in these really untoward, unfavorable situations, and they'd rather cover their hiney than to fall on the arrow of their own human frailty, their own human mistakes.
The political arena seems like a very interesting place and space.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people, you feel like once they get in, it's like, okay, what do you see? What did you see? What happened
Mm-hmm.
that made you do what you're doing? you
Yeah.
know, and the
Well,
people, your constituents are out here hollering and screaming. It's like, what are you doing? This
yeah.
is not what was happening with us in the 60s. We just
Mm-hmm.
lost Jesse Jackson.
Yeah.
And I just remember he made a statement. He said, we have so much power because we're unified, and no one was afraid to say anything. You got people scared to take a knee, scared to say anything. What
Yeah.
what is happening?
I think people have lost the tolerance and a grounding in reality. I think rudeness has taken over. I think most people don't understand history, appreciate history. I think people are more sensitive to viewpoint diversity now than ever before. I think we also have a lot of fake actors moving around online and setting the narrative for the public. I think we're disconnected and not in community and conversation with each other like we used to be. Fireside chats don't happen with the president. I'd love to see that come back.
Mhm.
We don't have, yeah, we're just disconnected. I think we're too disconnected, and there needs to be more connection so that that unity and accountability can actually flourish. And I do think that federal, state, and local leadership plays a significant role in that.
Okay, I just have a couple more questions here, or
Yes.
one statement. I had read Elon Musk made a statement, and it really made me think. And he was talking about AI,
Mm-hmm.
and he said in 10 to 20 years, work will be optional
Mm-hmm.
and money will be deleted.
Mm. So I heard him say that.
Mm-hmm.
What that sounds like to me is central bank digital currency, where they can put in or take out or freeze your assets at will. What
Mm-hmm.
that looks like to me is a lack of control and by the people. I think UBI, Universal Basic Income, sounds good to people, but there's no free lunch. So I've never seen a situation where they just want to pay people for nothing, for doing nothing. So I have grave concerns as to what that means, that he is saying that, and what that would look like in real life. In exchange for what? Will you have optional work? And and a universal basic income. I don't see us being that progressive. I think that's a progressive suggestion. So it
Mm-hmm.
gives me pause. What
I
about you?
think it definitely, to me, should be an awakening statement for people that they need to get involved,
Mm,
and not let these billionaires and
Techno bros.
all these people, these huge corporations continue to
Mm,
run things and make decisions.
mhm.
People need to get involved. So if we invite you back in 1 year,
Mm.
what specific changes do you expect we will see in Black households?
Okay, so 1 year from today would be February 18th, 2027.
Mm-hmm.
I would be sworn in January 5th or 6th or something like that, 2027. So it would only be a month and a couple weeks, so 6 weeks after I'm sworn in. I think people will be more aware of the role of their US Senator. They would be aware of what I am working on and how, and the extent to which their House rep up there in Washington, D.C. with me, as well as their state leaders, are collaborating with me to get the work done for them. I
Mm-hmm.
think I will have many in Black American and Illinoisan households will be directly connected to an advisory board, for volunteer, of course, for my senatorial office. So farmers, tech folk, educators, all the like. And I would hope that people will feel more connected to their government, and that they have a voice in the governance that is happening for them. And then in terms of implementation, so I said I will have been in office for 30 days. So if they will allow me to present a bill that quickly, then I will present those bills to the Legislative Council and have them take a look at it for presentation to the Senate for preparing it for a vote. All the ones that I mentioned, the four that we talked about tonight, the Family Land and Home Equity Protection Act, the Heirs Property Protection Act, the VALOR Launch Act for veterans, as well as the clarification of original intent of Birthright Citizenship Act of 2027.
And then how are you going to deal with members of your party that oppose
Mhm.
these legislations or some of these legislations?
Yeah, so I like I said, I do plan to introduce myself and have some eyeball to eyeball time with all of my colleagues and their staff, and educate them about what is going on and the potential benefits. I will submit my works to an analysis, a pre-assessment of potential impacts, so the economic and social and other markers would be well presented. I will present to the people across the country those benefits, and then they can have the conversation with their House reps or my fellow senators about if they want to put pressure on them to come alongside what we're trying to accomplish. And of course, I will be open to, how people feel that those impacts, the things that I'm proposing would impact them as well.
Okay. I hope at some point people can see, or our governance can see, Black people, the benefit of us as a people in this country as in a better space than usury.
Yeah.
That's my hope.
I love that. And what I have shared with the lineage based investment that I proposed about the redirection of current minority spending is 8 out of 10 Republicans and conservatives that I talk to agree with it. And they absolutely understand that letting all of that go on for so long is one of the reasons we have so many of the social problems that we have, and they want to fix it as well. So I talked to them about the reality of the moral and economic and social benefit to the nation of making right on correcting that misappropriation instead of having everybody fly over here and compete with us for those set asides that were originally designed to address our the things that had happened and whatnot. And they're down for that. I think they want it to be well designed and they want it to be effective, right? They want it to change outcomes. And that's what I'm looking to do. So
Well, you have the final words.
oh my goodness. Well, I
And
enjoyed
don't forget to let us know about your level of backing and support that you're getting right now.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, I appreciate the conversation. I always enjoy talking to you. And I
Yes.
hope when I come back in a year as a seated US Senator, I look forward to having a conversation with you about what things are looking like in DC. Currently, we are less than a month from Election Day on March 17th. And so I have received support from people across the country, Republicans who are now coming on board. They're saying you're the one who can win the general election, because what's the point in winning the primary in March if you can't win the general election in November? And so people are expressing a confidence that I am the candidate to do that. I am getting donations from around the country. So if you can donate, please feel free to go to my website, www.longforsenate2026.com. That's LONGFOR Senate 2026.com. Hit the green button, donate as much as you are able to. We are connecting with people around the state to get the word out. We're asking people to vote early. I've been educating people about what it means to vote in a Republican primary. Any registered voter in Illinois can ask for the Republican primary ballot. When you go in, you have to ask for the Republican primary ballot. If they ask you, what do you usually vote? That's not the thing. You tell them, I want the Republican primary ballot, and you can find me on there, Pamela Denise Long. If you've never voted in a primary before, that's okay. Just come pull that Republican primary ballot, check Pamela Denise Long, U.S. Senate will be at the top of your ballot. You'll find me there. I have really appreciated all the support that the Black American community has provided as well. I see that our community is fed up with the promises, and we're looking for folks to really deliver. I'm finding that among rural folks in Illinois as well, white folks who are just like, you know what, I'm tired of the nonsense. I want someone who's going to do what they say they're going to do. And I'm honored, humbled, really, that people feel confident in me going forth and using my gifts, talents, and abilities in this different way, although I've been advocating for Americans First policy for quite some time. So people can find me on social media. I'm on TikTok. I do a lot of quick videos on there. And you can also find me on YouTube. You'll find my CBS interview that I did recently on CBS Chicago's morning show with Dana Kozlov. You'll find my ABC 7 2-minute statement that I issued. And you'll find some of my videos about the Reconstruction era, 14th Amendment, and the like. So, in Facebook, you can find me there as well. So again, I'm Dr. Pamela Denise Long. Vote for me, vote in the primary so that I am the Republican who will be standing on the stage taking on whoever the Democrat nominee is for the U.S. Senate seat.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Family, it's important that we get involved. And as you know, we ask every week that we support Black businesses.